So, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, it was nice that today I didn't wake up with a headache. Last 2 days I did. That generally has to do with I was in town, and then I get reminded of how sensitized I am to all that. It's easy to forget because I'm in such a low EMF environment, and it's easy for me to think that I'm good till I'm not, So
Yeah.
today I'm very good and happy to see you.
Yeah, likewise. It's been too long. I can't remember exactly when we spoke last time, but I think that I was going into summer and you were going into winter, and now it's now it's the reverse, right?
The other way around. Yeah.
Yeah.
True. Yeah, no, it's slowly starting to become quite nice. I mean, we've still got some rain spells. I'm in this little microclimate where actually the bigger bay here is beautifully sunny, and I'm in sort of the little wet spot of it. But being Dutch, coming to this kind of weather is actually still pretty amazing.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, so I pulled a little piece out of your letter and posted it as a note, and it was when you were talking about forgetting that you're sensitive because you're living in a more or less pristine area, and then you go to town and you really realize how much the world is being poisoned. And it
Mm,
just
yeah.
it just makes me wonder about everybody else who doesn't have a pristine area. They're just getting cooked slowly.
Mm, yeah. I mean, that's how it often feels to me. If you say, being cooked slowly, that's where I feel it mostly in my eyes. They feel like hard and pressurized, and it doesn't feel good. It's a bit of a scary feeling, I must admit, when I really tune into it. It's the part I like least of being exposed, that it feels somewhat permanent.
Yeah, hopefully it'll stop before cataracts.
Mm. Oh dear. Yeah.
Where did I read about that? Was that in Invisible Rainbow? That the Vietnam era helicopter pilots were trained to fly towards the radar as a simple way to get past to the airport, back to the airport, and they began
No.
suffering from cataracts. Was that in that, or what book did I read that in?
No, I don't think it was in the Invisible Rainbow. I don't remember that. But
I'll have
yeah,
to
I
remember.
can totally see that. Like sometimes when I go out to swim, that is it still has about 60 microwatts of exposure on that beach, and it feels very different if I have my head towards the mountain range where the cell towers are on, or if I use my skull basically as a blocking. But if my eyes are directed to that, I can start to feel it quite quickly. Within 5 to 10 minutes, it starts to yeah, leave an impression. Mm.
I remember in one of Becker's books, I don't remember if it was Cross Currents or The Body Electric, he mentioned that neither humans nor animals could feel radio frequency radiation. And I think it was at that moment when I read that I realized sort of weapons potential of this stuff. And then he went
Mm.
on and he mentioned the one test animal, a dog that they were irradiating, turned to face the radiation directly, because it's being emitted from a horn, a directional RF horn. And he noted that the dog turned towards it. And I've often wondered if that was just to avoid the discomfort of sort of heating one side and not the
Yeah.
other. And so the dog was just trying instinctively to minimize it, or what was going on there. But
Yeah, to balance it out, I think there's a lot of that going on in it's not just an OCD thing. It is we're trying to balance out things in our body, and actually to come that the feeling I remember distinctly that I would feel the 4G that I had just installed in the house 12 years ago. As I was walking up the hill, I could feel it on the opposite side of where it was coming from, because I felt a heating patch on my skull, like it was just slightly warmer. And that made me realize, oh, this is maybe, my water lens of the brain is actually focusing the bundle on the other side. It was the opposite of where I thought. And once I started to pay attention to that, I could notice that while driving or sitting in a car, I could feel the cell towers doing exactly the same thing on the opposite side. So, yeah, we can't really feel maybe the radiation in itself, but we can feel the effects if you tune into it. That subtle elevation of temperature, that little bit of heating, is something you would totally easily miss unless you are, tuning into it.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about StarLink? Do you want to talk about convenience, amusement, and stimulation, problems with neighbors, snake oil salesmen, cost, the true cost of EMF protective clothing that works, or what tickles your fancy? What do you feel like talking about today?
Oh gosh, I was like a whole smorgasbord, like, oh yes, yes, and yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about any of them. They all sound like really good subjects, and they're all very relevant. I could talk a bit about my experience with StarLink this week, because it's been an ongoing saga, and I think there's maybe some relevance for people that are living more rural and having to find a way to be on the internet, like myself. It's maybe something that I can add something useful to it.
Yeah, that would be good. I've been working on a paper in my mind about StarLink, and there's good news and there's bad news. So I don't want to share my thoughts first. I want to hear your thoughts first, and then I'll share, because you had some experience, like really relevant experience in the last little while. And so why don't you tell people what you've done there? And for people who haven't seen our first interview, you had the courage to leave behind what most people would consider to be a normal life, and sought out a place where you could live comfortably in a pristine electromagnetic environment, and have been enjoying living in that remote place and feeling better while you're there. And yet there's this hunger for community that's difficult to satisfy, and there's a hunger in your part. A big part of your artistic expression is through technology, right? And so why don't you pick it up from there and talk about how you get on the internet?
Yeah. When I moved here, the biggest draw was, of course, that it was extremely low EMF, and there was just enough signal to be able to run a 4G modem. And I thought, well, let's give that a go and see how that works. But I wasn't happy with how much energy scatter it would create. Like, even though I had it sealed in a sort of a directional dish, so that the most of the energy would go towards the cell towers, and I thought that could work. But I realized it was scattering a lot on the leaves and the trees in the pathway. So I was just basically polluting my own sanctuary here. And so for the second option,
people will have a hard time understanding what you've just said. So you're projecting the radio frequency radiation that's necessary for modern communication towards the cell phone tower. And a portion of it, anytime there's a collision with a surface, some will go through, some will be trapped within, and some will bounce back, even the leaves. So this radiation is being projected in an area where then it bounces back in the leaves, and just that amount that's bouncing back is enough to make you sick. Is that, what you were experiencing?
Yeah, absolutely. I also often, people have a hard time imagining what these rays do. I just basically say, everything is transparent to these rays. They can go pretty much through it, except metal and water have more reflective qualities, and the water itself is also a bit absorbent. So it's like pretty much everything looks like a jellyfish, I think, to if you could see in that spectrum of the radio waves that we're using to beam over data. And, in some ways, I would be better off not to bother with this whole internet thing and just not use technology. And like you said, it is part of what I really enjoy doing. I love the whole tech. Sometimes I feel sorry for myself that I can't use all that new stuff, including the AR and VR and the drones and all that. But it just makes me really sick. So I'm in my quest to find a way to be able to connect with the world, like with you here now. I've been trying to find different ways how to connect to the internet, and ideally I would just have a cable that I plug in and it's all sweet and it's good and there's not much extra EMF fields coming from it, and that'd be the end of the story. But in this case, there is no cable coming to this rural property, and so I had two options. One is to try 4G modems, and that, like we just discussed, that created too much of a dirty environment, as in there's more electric or radio frequency fields being scattered around. That basically made it impossible for me to be outside and have the modem on at the same time. So I would have to switch it on, go back into my caravan, and then be sort of safely shielded. So with my second experiment was with StarLink, and that was a bit scary because I know that StarLink is operating at a frequency that I can't measure. So for people to know that a lot of the basic measuring tools that we use, like the Safe and Sound Pro, are up to 8 gigahertz, and the StarLink is actually communicating with the satellites at 12.8, I believe. And so that also doesn't get picked up by the millimeter wave meter. So it falls just right in between. But I've placed it on the property in a space where it's optimally aligned to the sky, so that it can pick up the satellites properly. It's on a long pole, and it's away from where I am. Generally, when I walk past it, I can feel it, like within a couple of minutes. I've forgotten about it a couple of times. And then we were standing up there with other guys talking, blah, blah, blah. And then I started to feel nauseous quite quickly. I realized, oh, hold on, the antenna is there. So I was hoping that the dish, how it's designed, it should be only emitting the signal up straight to the sky, to the satellites. So my hope was that if that is done properly, it should just only beam upwards and not scatter to the sides or down. But I don't think they've done a very good job on that. And yesterday I went into a deep dive trying to improve the situation, because not only do we have to deal with the signal going up to the sky in that range that we can't measure, and it is affecting me. it is also an incredibly noisy, as in dirty electricity noisy device. The StarLink is putting out so much dirty electricity. It's absolutely horrendous. So I have a static meter, a dirty electricity meter, to see how the grid power, which is powering the StarLink, how it is with and without the StarLink. And when I don't have the StarLink on it, it's about 380 millivolts, which is kind of normal to be expected from a grid power source. And if I put a filter onto it, a static filter, it goes down to 11 millivolts. I personally still don't like AC at all. I can't really be with it for too long. But if it's a clean AC or clean-ish, I can use a power tool for maybe an hour, 2 hours, and I'm funny enough more capable to work with that than with RF exposure from Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. But as soon as I plug in the StarLink, it goes up to 2700, and even beyond the measuring scale of the static meter, it goes beyond 3000 millivolts. And even with the filter, it still stays up, around the 400 or 500 millivolts. It's an incredibly nasty noise that comes from it. With another meter, it's more like a radio meter. It's a German e-smog meter, which doesn't have a very nice working scale. It's a bit just with lights. I mean, it's a good indication, but the sound of it is very sensitive and very precise. It has helped me a lot with figuring out where something was coming from. So I noticed that same sound signature with the StarLink machine itself is actually traveling over the Ethernet cable. And it's about 200 meters away from here with a router and a switch point in between. So I've done a lot of things to make sure that it was done properly. But all the way down at the end of the line, this nasty, it sounds almost like a Star Wars fighter or something. It's really nasty. It's different than your normal AC sound, and that nastiness travels over the Ethernet cable, goes into my dongle, goes into my laptop, then from my laptop goes onto my keyboard, which both are electrically shielded and grounded with a mesh, and it just suddenly puts all that energy still on there. It's in fact so bad that if I uncouple the Ethernet cable, my grounding sheet in the caravan picks it up even when it's not connected. I don't know exactly what kind of nastiness it is, but there's not a single device that I possess that is putting out these kind of fields. Like whatever they've done with StarLink, it is amazing how it catches all the data, how it can communicate with the satellites whizzing over at 17,000 kilometers an hour. It is an absolute marvel of engineering. But what they've done with the dirty electricity and what it puts out, and the fact that it puts it out on an Ethernet cable, a Cat6 cable, is inexcusable, I think. I don't know what kind of corners they've cut, or they just really don't care about that part. But it makes it almost impossible for me to use it, which is a pity, because I do want to be on the internet, but it's the one thing that I'm struggling with trying to uncouple. I've put in, sorry, I'm on a rant here, but I've tried to put even a media converter, which is an optical fiber setup, to uncouple this dirty electricity from reaching me, but that had a whole another set of problems in itself with high frequency RF emitting from these things. So I'm back to square one, and I'm not quite sure what to do with it. The static filter has helped a bit. I mean, has helped a lot to bring down the AC, but it hasn't done that much for all the energy that is coming down the Ethernet cable. So that was a bit of a runaround, but I've got good internet, but it's the one big dirty source in my life right now that I am struggling to get rid of, because it does affect me to a point where If I'm not around the computer, not around that Ethernet cable, I feel a lot better. I mean, don't get me wrong, still better than Wi-Fi, by a lot. But I wish that engineers would understand that there is a biological effect from non-thermal, that there is a non-thermal effect from these kind of frequencies. And if they would take that into account, I don't think it would have to cost a lot to make technology a lot more safe.
Mm-hmm. So I'll just briefly kind of breeze through all the technical problems that I heard you say, and you can correct me when I'm done if I get something wrong. But there is this effect around the square, sort of block antenna that you get with the StarLink, and you can't be near that. And the one of the big challenges is that you can't measure that particular frequency range of radio frequency radiation. So you can't go, for example, and take a Safe and Sound Pro 2 up to this square antenna that comes with a StarLink and see how safe a distance is, because it won't read at all. And yet the millimeter wave meter is too high, so it's sort of hiding. The StarLink radiation is sort of hiding between these two instruments' ability to see, and therefore you can't know what the safe distance is. And what I think is tragic is people are putting these things on their homes and on their RVs, and they're just not aware. And people generally feel like it's a curse to be poisoned, electrically poisoned, to such a degree that you can feel, and not in a good way, but feel the synthetic radiation all around you, including, as you just mentioned, AC electricity. However, it does give you and I a benefit when we are in a casual situation, and then we begin to feel those symptoms. For me, the brain fog, or difficulty with speech, or heart palpitation, something like that is like the first to manifest. And I know you have some similar, but maybe not the same symptoms. Anyway, that causes you or I to look around and say, well, this is a problem around here. I got to leave. And it isn't a matter of looking at something and then seeing, the nocebo effect. It's more like, whoa, okay, that's what's making me sick. So just so that people might understand that. And then there's the whole issue of, okay, how do you get the internet data to and from that StarLink antenna module? You can place it far enough away from where you're going to be using your computer to be safe. But how do you get it then connected to your computer? Of course, you don't want to use Wi-Fi, which is the default. But you can now, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can disable the Wi-Fi and hook it up to Ethernet. But what people don't understand is that all of that dirtiness, and when I say dirtiness, I'm talking about the radio frequency radiation that's being freely liberated in the environment of that thing. It does follow that cable all the way back to the computer, and the electronics, how it is using the alternating current or AC power to power that device. It has to be changed from alternating current to direct current to power the circuitry. And whatever's going on in there, it creates a huge mess with regard to dirty electricity that then gets coupled along your electric power cord all the way back to your house, and then corrupts everything on the house. And then Daniel has tried what would be a great fix if it had worked, which is you go ahead and you break the Ethernet cable, not break it, you just don't bring it all the way back to the house, and you put it to an optical coupler. So it's now turns into light energy that goes across a non-conducting cable. So it doesn't allow that radio frequency radiation to travel along the Ethernet cable anymore and go into your home. But these devices on either side are problematic in and of themselves because they produce a bit of the same effect as, that hash that you're getting that travels along the wires. And then the last factor is the dirty electricity. How do you mitigate that? And it's really copious. I've seen the oscilloscope readouts for what that will do to the power system. So have I got all that correct? And including the part about now you can disable the Wi-Fi and use Ethernet and whatnot. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it made me actually, with the Wi-Fi, I think because with version 2, they omitted that option. Like the first version had an Ethernet cable, then the second one didn't, and the third one now has Ethernet again. I wonder maybe they had too much problems with that same sort of dirty signal on it, and maybe that's why they thought, oh, well, let's not bother with it and just omit that. And then by popular demand, they did bring it back, but just didn't really complete the job properly. So yeah. Oh, and to understand, if you want to make proper use of the Ethernet, you actually have to switch out or switch off the whole router part of the StarLink. So when you do that, you're basically back to square one, where you can only use one device on the StarLink. So you have to add a router, an external router that then can give out the addresses so that you can have multiple devices on the Ethernet. That's the only caveat that there is now with it. But yeah, no, including the whole optical coupling, which was a real sad moment because I thought, yes.
Yeah, I got it right.
This is going to work.
Yeah. And, it might work for some people who are not profoundly sensitive, but here's how I think about that. Whatever hurts the most sensitive of us, is it not causing damage to everybody? They just can't perceive it, Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been on my mind a lot. It's like it's such a bizarre state that we're in, that to be such an absolute minority that is feeling this. Like for the first 10 years, I would maybe meet one person a year that would say, yeah, I feel it too, or yes, it does affect me too. Nowadays, it's a lot more people that are starting to catch on to it. And I compare it a little bit to the moments like in the 90s when, everybody was smoking, and there would be one person going like, it's bad for my asthma, or, and the rest of us were like, well, I don't know. It doesn't affect me. I can smoke as much as I want. And yeah, maybe if we smoke 2 packs, then yeah, you might feel not too great. But, my granddad became 80 or 90. So there's enough examples of how we can just dismiss any health effects from smoking from that perspective. But does that mean that smoking in itself is not causing any harm? No, I don't think so. And I think it's the same with the EMF. The only problem is that it's even less visible. Sometimes I feel a bit worried because I think that if you haven't experienced it, if you're not feeling it, or you haven't picked up what it is doing to you, it's a really hard thing to convey to people, because they're kind of like, well, I don't see a problem, I don't feel it. But I think I agree with you. It is affecting each and every one of us. It's just, when is it going to catch up with you? Maybe it takes 10, 20 or 30 years before you really start to feel it. I mean, I spent at least 15 years deep in tech, and really enjoying it. I mean, it was glued to me. I would be using it all the time. I loved it. I could do all sorts of stuff with it. And then suddenly the body was just, done. I can't handle this anymore. It's too stressful.
Yeah, and me too. My first career was in high tech, so I was right in there. And, sometimes I wonder whether that is why I'm feeling it before other people. But I also take a lesson from my wife, who never has considered herself to be electrically sensitive. She's just married to me and therefore living in a shielded house with me. And the odd thing is now that she can feel when she's sick. In other words, somehow she didn't recognize that she was being harmed before, and now she does. And I don't know exactly how that works, but I've heard others explain the same thing. Spouses of those who became electrically sensitive, who went into pristine environments, and then when they go back into the burn, what's considered to be normal now in society, they really feel the difference. So it's an interesting thing. So here's a question about StarLink. Let's imagine that you could get it working to your satisfaction somehow. What about the moral implications of StarLink?
Yeah, that's a real tough one. Because I think there might be dangers that even go beyond the direct radiation of the planet and all life on it. I have actually been using ChatGPT and the different ones, including Grok from Elon Musk and the other OpenAI ones, to try to assess like how much extra radiation is it putting on the planet, how much elevated levels are we getting in full coverage on everywhere, and the estimations from what I got from that is somewhere between 0.1 microwatts up to 30 microwatts. And both numbers are still worrying to me that it is blanketing the planet with this radiation. The only reason why I went for it, because it seems to me that having an RF connection between the satellite and my module has less life in its pathway than, going vertically seemed like a less intrusive way than going horizontally, where everything in its path is being blasted. And I don't think we can underestimate the amount of energy that's being put out by all these cell towers and all the individual modems and phones on land. I think both situations are incredibly worrisome. And yeah, if you talk about the moral thing, it's like I feel indeed just by using this internet connection, it's just as bad as, I don't know, buying stuff that is directly linked to slavery or that is putting out huge pollution into the planet. It's a very undesirable situation that we're in. I mean, I've been wondering, why can't we just have more harmonious ways of data communication, and maybe through optical wires? I mean, if we would take this seriously as a collective, as a humanity, I'm sure we could figure ways out forward. But as it is now, it's a very dirty business, and every satellite that gets put up there, partly because of my funding personally, putting money into the coffer, is shooting up another satellite. But if I put that money into the 4G, then there's another cell tower popping up. Both ways are really undesirable. But at the same time, what do I then just let go of any form of communication and not have internet and just basically be silenced? And I think it's my duty as somebody who is basically a canary in the coal mine to use this medium like you're doing to bring it out there, because if we stay silent, people won't know what hit them. It just becomes the new normal. We get sicker and sicker, and gosh, no idea what's going on. I mean, that is basically how it is being approached right now. It's like, oh yes, fertility rates are going down. No idea what it is. Could be the chemicals. Who knows? And the EMF. Oh, it could be maybe stress of work. EMF. They're not hearing us, and it's so obvious. Once you pick up on it, it is not even a. Yeah, that boggles me. And like, what do you think of that? Like, how is it possible that people just will not register on that level, while once you feel it, it's so obvious?
Yeah. And I'm going to answer that, but I think I need to do something to my lighting. Does it look like
Oh, yeah.
Can you see my image okay? Anyway, back to the moral implications of StarLink. I think you've really put your finger on it exactly, the entire discussion. And so I don't want people to miss one of the things that you said, which is, depending on who you believe, StarLink is radiating the surface of the Earth with anywhere from 0.1 microwatts per square meter to, what was the upper number you thought?
30, which would be quite
30.
a lot.
And so there are people around the world right now who even know what a microwatt per square meter is. And they're thinking, that's no problem. I have 1 million, or I have, 1,000,
Yeah.
100,000. So my friends, where you need to be is between 0 and 1. I mean, if you had my meter
Absolutely.
just needs to be looking at between 0 and 1. That's where life might be able to exist. And more to the point, I think maybe you and I agree that where I want to be is 0.0001.
Yeah.
I want to be 1,000 times, 10,000 times less than 1. So although the number sounds small, we can't overlook what's being talked about. I've often said the only long-term sustainable protection any of us have against terrestrial radio frequency radiation is terrain. Because you put a mountain or a couple of mountains between you and civilization, and up to this point, it's been great. But if StarLink is indeed radiating the entire surface of the Earth, that means there are no more safe zones. And clearly it can't radiate the entire surface of the Earth all at once. But in an effort to provide service, if you have somebody within 3 miles of you, it's going to be radiating your little corner of paradise from above.
Yeah.
And, well, sure, you can put a metal roof on your home, and that's probably going to protect you while you're in your house. But what about when you want to be in the garden? What about when you want to be, on the seashore? And so there are profound, I believe, moral implications. Who are they to decide they can radiate the surface of the entire Earth without consent? I mean, honestly, that this is egregious violation of morality. And there's a lot of research that indicates that if you took it down even 10,000 times less than what I would prefer, bacteria are still affected. So you've got to ask, is the existence of StarLink what caused the decimation of that insect population in that huge lake in Ireland? I don't know if you saw that story on Arthur Furstenberg's website, but yeah, it's one thing for a human to feel uncomfortable. And of course, Daniel and I and the people that we help, we don't want that. But what's it doing to the birds and the bees, right? So that's part of the moral issue as well. And it's a good conversation about, like, if there's a cell phone tower sitting here, that isn't good. Okay, but if you're over here and you can work out a directional antenna and have 4G LTE broadband service so you can get on the internet, and by the way, that's what I'm using right now. So I'm not innocent here. There are people and animals downstream from me. I have a directional antenna. So between me and wherever that 4G tower is, I'm increasing the RF intensity, however minutely, but I think it's the data that really defines the harm, the amount of data, as well as the intensity. So I'm adding to that. And I don't take it lightly. I don't take it lightly at all. So I also want to agree with what you were saying, Daniel, which is, what then? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You and I maybe are among the few people who can understand this moral dilemma. We're also among the very small population of people that understand that this new normal that's being presented is harmful. If somebody was to ask me, can people live in a synthetic electromagnetic environment, I would say no, or not very long, or not very well. But unfortunately, people are either willfully ignorant or they just don't understand. They don't want to understand. Cognitive dissonance, I don't know. But like I say, we not only can feel it, but we know it's harmful and we understand the moral ramifications. So then did Daniel and I go without internet access? Because we wouldn't be doing this right now. We have no other option. I never would have met you. So profound, right? I mean, this is not a small thing, is it?
Yeah. It reminds me of the lead poisoning of the Roman Empire, right? Where they were drinking out of lead cups because it made the wine taste sweeter, and everybody was drinking out of it. I wonder if they'd known, maybe they would still drink it because it was, well, we all have to die at some point, and it does make it taste sweet. And I think that a lot of people, even when they know, even when you tell them, like I've had some issues here in my community where I moved to be EMF free. Then they were using their phone and to stream a movie actually, and so using their phone as a hotspot, and it was blasting all the way into my space. And so I went up to them like, what the hell? It's, I thought we were keeping it EMF free. And, they were like, oh, I'm sorry. We didn't realize that it would reach that far. And then the next time, again, using phone and then when it really came down to it, we sat down, had a real discussion about it. And they were like, yeah, it's all fine that you need an EMF free space, but you didn't really expect us to not use our phone, right? And then suddenly it sounds like incredibly unreasonable. And I think it will be very unreasonable for most people. Like, you can't expect me not to use my phone. You cannot expect me not to use wireless. Like, what do you think? This is, and then came the second part. It's like, yeah, well, I have a mate who's been dealing with electronics for decades, and he's doing fine. So can't be that bad, right? Yeah, that's back to square one in that one.
So I have a question about that. And by the way, you moved 1,000 kilometers to get to the community where you are now. It's not a large community, and it's not a terribly large space. What did you tell me? It was 500 meters by 500 meters or something like that? Or
I mean, it's 1,000 by 100 meters, so the property itself is quite reasonable, but the little spot that is actually EMF free, I mean, it registers as 0.000 on the Safe and Sound Pro. It's a 50 by 50 meter kind of little patch. It's my little patch where I'm.
Yes, I know.
I'm there
in
my little caravan, just safe. So when just on the edge of that, somebody's using a device and it penetrates that last bit of space, yeah, that did cause some anxiousness. Like, okay, so where am I safe? And honestly, I also really don't like to have to walk around with my meter. I don't want to carry $500 to $1,000 of equipment with me all the time when I go to the outdoor loo or pick up something on the land or wherever I go. I have to have a meter with me because I cannot trust the people around to actually have it switched off. And please understand, these are wonderful friends that totally understand what it does to me, and they are well informed of how it affects and when, at what point. But because they don't feel it themselves, it's still, yeah, theoretical. It's not real. They haven't had this visceral experience of it. So it's, yeah, of course I won't use it. But, when I do use it, I have to use it. And so that keeps me on my guard all the time, which is not great for the nervous system, because the whole vagal system gets triggered by this constant potential threat. And, some people would say in the past, like, oh, why do you have your meters with you all the time? Because that surely must stress you out. And that is actually part of the problem. Maybe you should just leave the meters and be fine to walk without it and just relax. That will be better. And I absolutely agree. If we have a relaxed system, then, yeah, things get less bad. But what they don't acknowledge is that this is a neurophysiological effect. I can't even think my way out of it, because it is happening on a layer deeper. The body's response on that vagal nervous system level is autonomous. I can't even think about it. Even when I'm not aware of it, my body can still be triggered by the radiation that's being emitted by this phone call that somebody's making or not too far away from me. So if anything, the meters help me to feel relaxed, because I know, well, at least the meter will warn me and I can move out of harm's way. At least the meter will tell me before I start to feel it, because if I start to feel it, it's already too late. I need the meters. And yeah. Your thoughts on that?
Do you think it's possible to live in community as an electrically sensitive person? And people are going to hate me for even asking that question, but there's so many variables to this. Is it possible, or are you always going to have a situation where, yeah, okay, everybody here is electrically sensitive and nobody wants to have any RF, and then everybody feels it and it's great. Oh, but my son-in-law came to visit. Oh, I guess he brought his smart. Do you think it's possible to live in community with others and enjoy a normal electromagnetic environment?
I've been thinking exactly the same, because the community that I came from, the 1,000 kilometers away from here, we all agreed that we'd want to have EMF-free spaces, especially in the communal spaces. The same way that we agree that it's smoke-free, vape-free, alcohol-free, drug-free. These are all things that we can agree on. And then if somebody would be smoking out on the deck with a beer in his hand, it's very easy. You go up to them, hey, this is not what we do. If you want to do that in your private space. The funny thing, though, is that if you smoke and drink in your private space, you wouldn't harm anybody. But if you're using your phone in your private space, you're still, affecting, at least for 50, maybe 100, 150 meters around you, quite directly, and possibly even further. Because, to your question, do I think it is possible? I've gotten quite a bit more skeptical on it, because I've been dealing with this for 5 years now in different forms of community, and the only ones that I have seen that you really can rely on it are the ones that actually deeply feel it, that are bodily harmed by it, that have felt the pain, that know what it means to, we call it innocently brain fog, but it's just, the capacity of being, of thinking, of existing is a threat. And at that moment, then we can talk and have a serious discussion like, are we going to make this EMF free? Yes. And down to what level? But everybody else, I'm going to say maybe that not everybody will recognize, but I grew up in Amsterdam in the 80s, and it was a bit of a seedy city like New York. A lot of drug use in the streets. I saw as a kid how heroin addicts behave. And later in life, I realized that the most similar social interaction that I saw from those heroin junkies was the same with smokers, with tobacco smokers. They get sort of whiny, and if they've got their drugs, if you've got your cigarettes or your heroin, you would find a hard time to spot the addict because their needs are being met. So they could seem quite normal and happy. But take it away, then this, I just, it's a sort of energy that is really easy to spot. And funny enough, I see that with our internet connection, our digital technology. Yeah, no, it's fine. I don't need my phone. No, I don't. Oh, yeah, we can do it EMF free. Oh, no problem. But you take away the internet and suddenly this, give me, I want it. It's an aggression. I have had so many aggressive conflicts basically with people that saw me as the reason why they couldn't get their internet fixed, why they couldn't get their social media fixed. So yes, it is. If we're going to talk, can you be in a community without that? Well, you have to be with people that really want it themselves, not just doing it for this other person that is sensitive. Because I have lived through that. I have had so many people that really care about me, that love me, that want the best for me. But if that means that they can't have internet access or that they can't have their phone on them, or just no, that's one step too far. So I'm pessimistic because even when I've put up like internet cable so that you can have your internet fixed, just not wireless. Okay, can we? Here's your internet. It's just not wireless. Still not good enough. People still but I need my phone. I need to be able to be called, and there's some notifications and things. So can you have a heroin addict or a cigarette addict in a situation where there is some availability, when there's some people sometimes smoking or using drugs? Probably not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next uncomfortable question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So let's imagine now that there was a small population of people who are profoundly damaged such that they would not they would never use a smartphone or wireless anything, of course, but that they would not allow their family members who might come to visit. Imagine there were a community like that and it was successful, right? Would it be allowed to stand?
You mean like would society or corporation or government let it be?
Yeah.
I mean, my naive, optimistic person would hope to see that people see the benefits of it, but I don't have a very optimistic view on how it would threaten this lovely situation we're in with all this tech and gadget. I'm curious how you're looking at it.
Well, when I help people, the people who make it, the people who survive, are the ones who, by providence, one day they see a contrast. Oh, my life is so much better away from the synthetic electromagnetic environment. My gosh, I'm getting better every day in every way. This is fabulous. And it used to be easy to achieve that. People could go camping and that's pretty much it. Now, the entire world has become a service area, except for a few very remote places. I don't think it's too far-fetched to imagine that everyone on Earth is affected by now. It's just that they're not seeing it because everyone has insomnia, everyone has brain fog, everyone has memory issues, everyone has behavioral issues, And it's quite normal to die of heart disease, diabetes, or cancer. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, the very fabric of reality has been altered. So that if there were an easy way to establish a contrast, wow, these people over here are doing great. I'm just not sure that that would be allowed to stand. Maybe that lovely community that we're both imagining that has a bunch of damaged people in it, so much so that they know better than to use wireless technology. And they've cleaned up the other three factors as well, the electromagnetic and dirty electricity. And they're so severely damaged that their family members wouldn't come and mess that up. Would they find a cell phone tower parked inconveniently a quarter mile away? You know what I'm saying? Am I overly pessimistic, or I'm just dealing with so many broken people all the time, and I see the pattern over and over again. So yeah, I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, I must admit that I generally try not to see sort of the evil in things, or the deliberate breaking of stuff. But yeah, you can't help but think that there is always a force that goes against what is good. I mean, it reminds me of how long did it take for us to sort of embrace organic food. Like, I've been brought up on organic food by my mom 40 years ago, and the resistance, and still ongoing resistance in Holland, to, like, by majority of people on that, well, there's really no difference between organic food and sprayed food. There's no proof of that. And I think these days we do understand, or a larger part of the population does see the benefit of having organic foods, and sees it in a holistic context of what it's not just doing to our bodies, but to the rest of the planet. So there's a growing awareness, but there's still this really strong effort. And if it's, I hate to see it as a single malign entity trying to push it upon us, but it definitely is a force that keeps on going. And maybe at the core there's profit driven, or it saddens me to think that we have options and solutions and ways of living that could make paradise on earth for everyone, and yet we want to stick and stay with this glitz in a way. And I understand how attractive it is, and yet at the same time, it's the beautiful white interior. But if you really look, of a house and the convenience that comes with it, but at the same time, if you just squint, you can see it's actually the gray from the Borg. It's actually sucking the life out of you and everything around you. Yeah, I don't know. And while the other part, which is actually the abundant, the natural, the giving part, looks scary, because it's like, oh, it's not. It is kind of strange and dirty. The off-grid life seems scary to a lot of people. While once you embrace it and have less electricity and technology around you, the happiness and the zest for life that comes with it, you can't compare that to anything. But yeah, I do hear you.
So I don't know the answer. I just enjoy talking to somebody who understands the parameters of the problem and has been affected by it as well. Yeah, have people become addicted to a toxic lifestyle? That's really part of the question.
Yeah, I mean, if I finally watch myself and come to a point of, like, the bad things that I like. I mean, I don't drink or smoke anymore sometimes I do, and then I notice like how drawn I'm to that destructive part. And even though you know it's bad, even drinking coffee, it's like, it's not great for the adrenals. It's not a great, there's something nice to it. And I've noticed that feeling when I was still using my phone. I could feel the painful effect it had on me, and literally quite painful. Sometimes I just couldn't bear to watch the screen, but I would still use it. And I noticed that same sort of pain addiction.
Stimulation.
I don't understand the mechanism of it. I don't understand why we could still want to use what is bad for us. Smoking, drinking, sugar. Well, sugar, I mean, that's hard to see. But, yeah, why we keep being drawn to something that is actually physically feeling bad? Yeah.
Which brings us to convenience, amusement, and stimulation.
Mm.
What do you?
Yeah,
So I wrote a paper.
This is where I would love to hear more from you. This is like, yeah, I've learned actually a lot from your podcasts on that, to see how. Yeah.
You want me to trace the parameters of the argument real quick,
Yes,
and then
please.
get your thoughts?
Mm.
So, when I was at my lowest point, which is I'm living in this beautiful homestead in a beautiful area, very remote, very few neighbors. And I realized that I had 33 years at that point of living with electromagnetic poisoning, and how much it had taken from my life or diverted my life. And I knew I couldn't live in that house anymore because it was alternative energy. And by that point, I had lost everything. So I had no resources to be able to do the kind of a significant restructuring that it would take to make an off-grid home livable. And it was a very, very difficult time. We ended up selling the house, and we didn't have the next place to go, but we thought, what could happen? We'll just take what we get from the house, and we can easily find a piece of ground here in this county where we live, and we'll build the house ourselves. And it all sounded great. That was the fall of 2019. And I think everybody knows what happened after that, and the world went crazy. And we began to be flooded with people seeking refuge coming into this area. And so we were stuck in this rental home up on a goat trail in the middle of nowhere. And the electric power was so bad up there, and I couldn't fix it because I didn't own it. We were renting. So the whole house was turned off. I didn't have any electric power at all. It was okay. We could live that way. I had mantle lanterns, propane-powered gas lanterns for light. That makes beautiful light. I got a propane-powered refrigerator. Okay, that was good. We had a wood stove for heat. It was wintertime, great. And so I made some green tea. And I'm not saying green tea is good for you. I think it's better than coffee. But it's got this theanine along with the caffeine. I don't know if you ever tried it. And so it gave me a lot of time to sit there and think, while I couldn't go out and work or do anything else, about how did we get in this mess that we're in right now with regard to the reckless spread of harmful man-made electromagnetic radiation everywhere. I mean, and the adoption rates of things like smart tech. Nothing in the world has ever had 90 whatever % adoption rate in a short period of time. If it were anything else that didn't give something to people, there would be more questioning about it. So with all of that as a preamble, I sat down to think about how we got in this mess. And people are uniquely vulnerable to three things. convenience, amusement, and stimulation. So convenience is represented by the power grid. First of all, you didn't have to have oil lamps or candles. You could flip a switch and you had to have light. You didn't have to carry water in a bucket. You got an electric motor for a pump. Very simple things like that. And amusement, oh, by the way, that brought all the disease of modern civilization. Nothing more than the power grid. And then you have amusement. So think of the radio, the AM radio first of all, and the fireside chats with the president in the United States and all that business. So and the War of the Worlds broadcast, which was just this great psychological operation, And that was all centered around amusement, right? And in the modern day right now, that's maybe more like YouTube, okay? Watching cat videos or whatever it is you enjoy watching. And then the last factor is stimulation. So think pornography and think social media. And both of these have this dopamine-driven response kind of thing going. And it is very, very addictive. And so now in one device, in a smartphone, you can talk to anyone, anywhere, access the internet, anywhere, anytime. So you've got all the convenience to do your banking, your texting, whatever you want to do. You've got the ability to access, cat videos or whatever on YouTube, and then the social media and whatnot. So what a perfect way to bait a trap. Like, if you sat down and explained to people, I want you to carry this radiation emitting device with you and keep it near you 24 hours a day, rational people would say, no way. There is far more scientific data indicating that there's cause to be concerned, some of it going back 50 years or more. We're not going to carry something emitting radiation in our pockets and are you crazy? But you start delivering convenience, amusement, and stimulation through this thing, and hey, this looks pretty good. So that's the idea. That's the sort of brief outline of how did we get here, and how do we encourage every living person to carry a radiation emitting device with them and keep it near them at all times. So anyway, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, it's smack on, and I suffer from that convenience stimulation addiction myself. I mean, I can sort of justify it saying, well, I do watch quite a few hours of YouTube, but I learn a lot from it, and I search and seek, and it's political and science and history. Like, I get so much more out of this medium now than I used to as a kid from television, for example, where basically, if you look at the quality comparison, it's absolute garbage what we would get on TV with a few nuggets here and there of stuff. Now it's just the algorithm really understands me very well and gives me exactly that. And I'm pretty proud of my feed. It is high quality stuff, but still, it's a lot of high quality stuff that is keeping me away from living a life and actually doing stuff and creating my own thing. It is still an addiction. And even though I've managed to squeeze out the wireless part of it, I'm still being, affected by the electric fields just of my laptop and of the Ethernet cable. It's still not particularly healthy. And I keep thinking about that moment that's etched in my memory of like scrolling on my phone while covering up one of my eyes because it was hurting so much. My head was in pain, and yet I would keep scrolling because, well, it's better than just being with the pain. And And the way you describe it, it's like an ultimate drug because it's useful, it's handy, it makes a lot of convenience, but we also project a lot of goodness onto it that really does it. If I explain to somebody, I use my phone the other way around than most people. My phone is always on flight mode. And if I need to, I will flick it on just briefly for a couple of minutes to send out a text. You could do that too. You can just flick it on when you need to call somebody and switch it off again and have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and data off all the time by standard. That would save you from 98% of the radiation in a day from this device, right? And just even that idea is blasphemy. That is like, oh, you mean I don't know.
Yeah.
We're deeply trained.
Yeah. And anyway, I think part of what's going on is there's this addiction response. And you mentioned Amsterdam, and you mentioned people. Did you say heroin? I can't remember if you used that for example.
That was in the streets. Yeah. There would be heroin addicts in the streets. Yeah.
And so if you went over to them and you woke them or you roused them and you said, hey, wake up. Did you know that's bad for you?
Yeah.
That's what I see now.
The same thing that
happening
happens
with the smart
is
tech.
denial. Yeah, and the addict would also be in denial. Like, no, I don't have a problem. At least with smart tech, there's an openness or an awareness. Like, yeah, it is affecting me, but it doesn't create a behavioral change. I think there's a lot of mental or cognitive acknowledgement of the addiction with people, but it doesn't change the behavior. It's like, yeah, I shouldn't, but Netflix. Well, I just want to relax. Yeah, I just got a little bit. And it's good that there's these apps and monitors that show how many hours. I mean, look at it this way: the amount of people that know how many hours they spend every day and every week on it is high. School kids know that they have a problem. They can tell you from stats easily how many hours they spend today on their device. They know it. We all know what is happening. It's so good. Yeah. I think we're in an epoch in history where you can no longer reach people with information. I think that has been closed down. And I don't know if you would agree with that or not, but that was what inspired me to come up with my strategic initiative number 1, which was EMF challenge facilities. So if you suspect that you are intolerant of wheat, some people will stop eating wheat and find out if they get better. It isn't rocket science. And, that's a type of a medical challenge. There's another medical challenge where you deliberately give somebody something. I don't know if they still do it this way, but a long time ago, I had a friend who thought she might be becoming diabetic. And so she told me she went in and they made her drink this terrible sugary solution. And then they looked at her blood sugar later and decided whether she was or she wasn't. So that would have been, like I say, I don't know if it's the current way of doing it. That would have been a medical challenge, to a provocation study. But my idea was, what if we had facilities? Short-term vacation rentals are a thing. Airbnbs are a thing. And in a few select areas that might be pristine from an EMF perspective or could be altered to be pristine, what if we had the ability for people to check in no matter where they lived, to be able to conveniently drive, 100 kilometers or less and get to a facility where they could go spend a weekend or a week and see what might happen. Not living in a synthetic electromagnetic environment. There's been a lot of interest in this
idea, and I actually have a friend and a client who already has a short-term vacation rental. And he is very interested in, and he understands the risks of synthetic EMF. So he was already in the process of cleaning his whole house up, getting rid of all the wireless. And his house is in a place where there is no cell phone reception. There is one little spot about this big in the kitchen for some reason that picks up a signal, but other than that, can't even get a signal. Anyway, he loves this idea of having a EMF challenge facility, and so he's moving towards that vision. And awesome. I think, how exciting would it be if we, because there's financial incentive for people who have vacation properties, you could probably get a lot more per night in an EMF challenge facility than you could get just an ordinary night or a week in a vacation home. So and it's a decentralized approach, right? It isn't this kind of centralized, we're going to do one clinic here and in a vast area. No. What if they were all over the place?
Yeah.
I think that it might be a really cool replacement, or at least an adjunct for legal action and advocacy, because I don't think we're getting anywhere anymore with legal action. I think that's a well-guarded front, and the advocacy, telling people this stuff is bad, you get the same reaction that you would from the heroin addict saying, it's bad. So anyway, your thoughts on that? We haven't had a chance to talk to each other about this.
Yeah, I think we've been both approaching this from slightly different angles, but coming to the same point is of I've always been involved in community because I want more people to experience community in the sense of what it means to have more connections with other people that are not necessarily your family or super close friends, that learn how to deal with the land and with good food and habits not just on a physical level, but also on a mental and spiritual level, where, we learn to shed some of the bad habits from society, that the selfishness and the way of going forward. And I've been trying to integrate the EMF part for the last good 5 years and seeing the challenges that come with it, but also the incredible advantage of people actually experiencing it. Because like you said, it's not something we can just tell. You have to feel it yourself. And even the people that think that have that they're convinced that they're not feeling it, if they would enter a challenge facility like you describe it, there could be a click. So yeah, I love the whole decentralized. Let's get it onto that. It would almost need a certification kind of way of how well is this place rated? How good is it doing on the RF? How good is it doing on the AC? And it's also a place that, I think it's absolutely necessary to help people with that. Because if you would just say, go stay somewhere where there's no radiation and see if you feel better, but they're not realizing that their AirPods in their pockets are still radiating them. Well, I spent 3 nights in a tent and I feel just as shitty, so I don't think it's the EMF. It's like, well, did you have actual proper measuring? Do you know that there was no radiation, or that the person in the tent next to you didn't have their 4G going, oh no, but I don't have any reception. Yeah, but your phone is still emitting and your Wi-Fi is still on and your Bluetooth is still on. So there's a lot of education that needs to go around it, and some hard numbers, because especially if it becomes interesting for people, like, oh yeah, we've got EMF free. So how low is EMF free? oh, well, we've measured it and it's only 200 microwatts, which is
Right.
way lower
Right.
than on the street. It's like, yeah, okay, well, yeah. I mean, it reminds me of my aha moment after being sick for more than 10 years and knowing that it was EMF. I didn't realize how profoundly big the difference can be by just that last little bit, because I had my space, and then we spoke about it last time, I had my space down to 0.1, and I thought, this is good. And it was only when I was in a 000, when there was really nothing around, that my brain started to be so much clearer, like dramatically,
Exactly.
I didn't
Exactly
realize,
right.
oh, okay, this is where it's at. That's what drove me to go live in a small caravan in a little patch in a little damp valley, because anything to help me get to that zero state is like worth it, absolutely worth
Right.
it. So yes, I would
If you
love
can't get your
more people to
yeah,
experience it.
yeah, if your brain is not working, you're done. You
Oh,
you
exactly.
can't do anything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
How do
for
you've been very successful in keeping yourself free from EMF, from what I've gathered.
yeah.
Have you experienced improvement in your resilience? How do you,
Yes.
because yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of people have no idea what it takes to improve. And
Mm,
so point one isn't good enough.
no,
No.
no.
One isn't good enough, 10 isn't good enough, 100. None no. You gotta be with an appropriate meter with the right level of accuracy and sensitivity over a defined frequency range. And then in my opinion, with third party testing, you got to get out to 3 decimal points. You want 0.000.
Absolutely.
And we don't have meters that go beyond that. I mean, I wonder what life would feel like with 0.6 zeros and a 1, like,
Mm, mm,
but, yeah, I can do well. I've recaptured my ability to think, and to write, which I had lost for, gosh, I don't even know how long, but, it's only happened after living in an area where every night, like in the middle of the night last night, I got up at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and I went over to my meter and just for fun took a look, 000. I mean, all the way. I think that is best. And
yeah.
I think the two measures, not medical measures, just Keith's measures, are you increasing your resilience and decreasing your sensitivity? So my benchmark is, my faith is incredibly important to me, and going to church was incredibly important to me. It was the very last thing I was willing to give up. And when I was at my worst, I had to give it up. And that meant a lot to me as a person of faith, not to be able to gather with others of similar. It was crushing. That was a very difficult thing. And
Mm,
yet it took me, the reason I had to quit going, it took me an entire week to recover for 2 hours spent in my church. And if it takes an entire week to you're not recovering. No, so you're just sinking lower and lower and lower. And that's so, like in a pristine, anyway. Now I can go to church and have been able to for years, and it takes me at most maybe a couple hours to recover. And I'll take that. No problem. So that's what I call decreasing sensitivity and increasing resilience. I love to be able to take my wife out to lunch, on occasion, but just to really enjoy it. And I couldn't do that either. And so now I mean, every restaurant has poison in it as a side dish for the meal that they're serving, because they can't imagine not offering a service like Wi-Fi, and everybody has their idiot slave devices, that they're radiating themselves and their babies and all the creation with. But no problem. I can go in any restaurant, take my wife out to lunch, enjoy a leisurely meal, not a problem. And if you're not gaining ground while the whole world is increasing and increasing and increasing the radiation levels, it's just, in my personal opinion, that's not where it's at. So since I mentioned babies, I need you to tell the United States audience who might not know, what is a Pram?
Oh, right.
Give him that definition first, and then maybe tell the story, because it's going to link together this quest for community. None of us can live without community, and how much that means. And you were able to do something recently that was a miracle, and it was very fulfilling for you. And I'd just love you to tell that whole story, if you would, beginning with this definition.
I don't even know what another word for pram is, but it's, a three-wheel.
It's a baby carriage.
Baby carriage.
Yeah, baby carriage. You push it. Yeah. All right. So go ahead and tell the story.
Yeah, I was invited to up on a mountain of where normally a festival would be held every 2 years, and I was invited by people, the smaller core crew that went up there. And I was very reluctant to go up there because I just don't want to be around people full stop, because there's always phones, there's always and it takes quite a bit to deactivate and talk through. And I know you've got it on flight mode, but it's an iPhone, so the Bluetooth is still on and the Wi-Fi is still on. And, in 10, 15 minutes, I can wreck myself and then be done for the day or the next day even, and have headaches. But I went up there anyway with a friend, and they were really interested in hearing more about my EMF side of things, because they themselves had already taken endeavors of reducing EMF exposure and asking people not to bring their phones to the festival. And so there was a lot of awareness around it. So I thought, okay, I might as well give it a go, because, how much better than that is going to be. And I would love to be up there in the mountains, beautiful, pristine nature. And it's a festival that I really enjoyed in the past when I wasn't so sensitized, and there's a lot of community and beautiful energy going around. So I went up there, and I actually had a headache because I went through town, and I didn't expect to do very well, because I thought, oh, God, I got a headache. But I held my talk, and I just let it be led by the people that were there. But I thought, you know what, I'm going to bring my big speaker, which is like a Bluetooth speaker, but if I plug in the auxiliary cable, it actually deactivates the Bluetooth part, which is not common anymore. All the Bluetooth speakers have Bluetooth on all the time, but this one still allows to deactivate the Bluetooth. It has amazing sound. It's pretty loud. And I plugged that into my Safe and Sound Pro 2, because I thought, well, people should hear what they bring to the device. And to my surprise, there was actually nothing going on except one device. I could hear clearly, there's only one device on. Duck, 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 duck. And because it was going through this amplified speaker, everybody was just perked up, because they were waiting for me to do the talk, and they were all sitting there and, with expected eyes, come and tell us the talk. I'm like, okay, first we're going to have to figure out what is going on here. There's still one device on. And everyone's like, no, I've left it in the car. No, I haven't got it on me. No, mine is switched off. So I went zigzagging through the audience and found it. And it was in a Pram. What did we call it? What's the American version of it? Anyway, it was in this baby carriage. Yeah. And it was pretty shocking, because I could tell that the mother was shocked. First of all, she's one of the aware people. She really doesn't want to be around wireless. And she has a meter herself, she told me. And she wasn't aware that it was emitting. So right next to her baby, her less than 1 year old baby, she has a phone that is active and emitting a pulse signal of what was more than 15,000 microwatts continuously. So even
Right
when
next
you
to her
have a
baby.
person that is like so aware of it and doing everything her best to can, trying to protect her own life and blood of a small child, can still make that mistake. It's so insidious. It's so difficult. So that really opened up the audience to like, okay, well, we wow, it's everywhere. It's even when we're like so aware of it. And that also shows the real challenge of how to deal with it in a day-to-day life.
Yeah, that was a great story. And you had been living without that large community so for a long time, and I know how much it meant to you to be able to participate in that festival and not only be there but give an interesting talk for people. And you wrote to me a lovely letter, and this is an old thing that our ancestors used to do. We would write letters to each other, and they would be long, and so you gave me that story, and I really appreciate that. And what irony that in that mass of humanity, everybody was radiation free except the poor baby. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then of course in what's normal society now, they don't even think about it. They put a baby monitor, which constantly emits radiation, right next to the poor infant. So,
Yeah,
well, we
there's a
talked.
lot of education needed, and I'm trying so my best to convey stuff that I've learned, to verbalize it in such a way that people get some imagination around it, because that's the only thing that we really have is their imagination. And that's why that speaker worked really well. Instead of my little meter making that annoying little squawking sound, people don't associate that with their own phone. They associate it with that device that I have in my hand. So they're like, switch that off. It's annoying me. I don't like that sound. And I can tell them like, no, that's your phone actually that's picking up. So the source of this annoying sound is in your pocket. It doesn't really work. But as soon as I plug it into that bigger speaker, and it's not anymore confined to this little device, but it's in the space, it's all around them, then they realize that is my phone. This hellish noise is my phone. And they don't know how quickly they have to switch it off. Then suddenly it becomes a visceral thing. So I think it's a mixture of space, offering spaces where they can feel for themselves what it means to be without, and also finding ways to show what it is doing. And I do think that, it needs to go a little bit beyond numbers. Numbers are, oh, you tell me 10,000, a million, one, numbers. I don't know. I don't know what to say, but have that squawking, annoying sound that is grating and annoying. Yeah, that I can see how that is not nice for my body, because it annoys me. Yeah, and it annoys your cells on a cellular level. And maybe there is a technical solution in that way. I mean, if we would compare what the difference is between noise and, let's say, harmony, music, maybe at some point our technology can play music to each other to communicate, instead of being this modulated signal that is just a sawtooth sound. It's harsh, it's abrasive, it's sharp, it's too hard on us. But maybe like, FM modulation used to be, that there's more of a smooth way of communication. I don't know if it's even possible, because maybe the amount of data that we're trying to push through is just too high of a frequency anyway. I don't know, but I think we can do better. I mean, we need to. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. So let's end with snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
Shall we? I don't know if we've ever talked about this. And I should let people know that you have begun to help people with EMF issues. And I haven't talked to you about this. It's rewarding, isn't it?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
It-
Yeah.
to
I
be
can
able
only
to,
imagine like what you, I would love to be able to do more work on that level. I mean, I'm restricted by where I can go, so I've been doing it partially online. That's why I'm also so keen on making this whole internet thing work, because I've been able to help people from a distance that were, you know, in severe danger, like literally struggling to be able to keep functioning and carry responsibility for their offspring. So yeah, there's a deep reward in that, but it has also solidified my approach to keeping it real in a way, because I've been so open to solutions, because you know there's not much guidance out there in the world to how to deal with all this stuff, and so everybody brings forward these things. Try this orgonite, have these discs, take these cards, this harmonizing kind of quantum scalar whatever thing, take these droplets, take these medicines. Like I mean, it's an endless slew of things that can help. And if you're, you know, like we've been suffering and it's painful and it is severely limiting. I mean, I've tried a lot of different stuff and I've kept an open mind to it, even though I'm, you know, very scientific and skeptical in a lot of ways. I'm also been brought up to be incredibly open-minded and look beyond the confines of what is right in front of us. So I don't see myself as a, you know, as a narrow skeptic, but I'm quite done with it, with all these pseudo answers and gadgets that are being sold for incredibly high amounts, so sometimes even thousands of dollars, just to sort of give people the sense of like, this will make things safe and now you can use your devices without an issue. And I take offense to it. It's yeah, it is offensive. It's hurtful, it's painful, and it's putting people in danger and deep harm. Yeah, anyway, sorry, it just went off there.
yeah, no, I mean, if synthetic EMF is harmful, and I think you and I both believe that it is, then you give somebody some magic something, scalar, harmonizing, whatever, shungite, I don't know. And you tell them that you're going to be okay now. You got a diode on your phone or a sticker or whatever. Well, the placebo effect is real, first of all. And secondly, like I mentioned much earlier on this conversation, Becker found a generation ago that in his time, he stated it categorically, no animals or humans can feel this. You and I know different. But most people can't feel the damage in real time. So it's not very nice for people to prey upon the people that I am trying to serve with legitimate, and you're trying to serve with legitimate assessment and legitimate physics-based remediation strategies that actually result in a measurable reduction of intensity of exposure. And yeah, it's egregious, and y'all who are involved in that, you ought to be ashamed of yourselves. So, is that putting too fine a point on it?
No. But you know, I do think that some people like don't. They actually believe in their stuff. They, you know, when they like when I was up on there on that mountain, somebody had his tiny home parked there, and he's, "Do you mind having a quick look?" And I thought, "Oh, well, yeah, I'll have a quick look." And surprisingly, even though he had solar panels and an inverter, the AC was kind of well encapsulated. I think it's because of the double metal walls, and they were grounded, so it was actually pretty reasonable. I would have expected a lot worse. Till I came up to the sleeping space, and there were two of these orgonite pyramids that are obviously being put there to keep good energy, but they had little lights on them with USB charge with a AC adapter on it. They were putting out this huge field, completely polluting and poisoning his whole bedroom. So it's like, yes, I've got these beautiful orgonite pyramids that cost I don't know how much to make good energy, but actually on the physical level, you're poisoning yourself. So I think it does pay for people like us to just cut through the bullshit and look at where it is, because it is actually dangerous to just let it be, because there's a big tendency of people to just, well, we don't know if it could be helping, right? So why so negative? And why are you dismissing something that you maybe don't understand? And so that has kept me in a state of like, maybe you're right. But after helping that kid and really seeing there's a disabled kid with real issues from radars from the ships going by, that it's like that there's no, and they tried all the shungite and all the kind of stuff, and it did not help. What helped was this pure practical remediation, getting him in so much of a safe space as possible. That worked. And everything else, I'm kind of like, wow, yeah, sure. Like you said, the placebo effect will help a lot of people. Like, I do feel better. Yeah, because your mind, and you could also just do a breathing exercise and you probably would feel better. Do a bit of yoga and you probably would feel better. It's just as much as this, whatever, $200, $500, $1,500 gadget. And maybe there's some active electric field outputting devices that could work because they're sort of suppressing, pushing out what is going. But in the end, people report that they have a real hard fallback from that. It works for a while, but then your body gets used to it, and then you realize how much extra electric field you've been exposed to. So I'm unapologetic to that. Like, let's call out the stuff that is snake oil, that is just preying on that. And I understand that people are really convinced of it because they've seen positive effects of it, but that doesn't mean it's working. It just means that you've given somebody something, a hope, a bit of a, and maybe, like you said, if they pay a lot for it, surely it must work, and that'll give you a bit of. But I think it's not. It's a lot clearer with the people that, I hate to say, that actually feel the stuff, that are actually in such a far state that they are getting joint pains, tinnitus, that are feeling the bodily harms of it. They don't take the bullshit because they know, like, well, yeah, I tried it doesn't work. It's mostly the people that are just on the edge or not feeling it quite yet that seem to be, and trusting a lot of this stuff because, well, they don't have the bodily experience of it. But I might be overstepping, but like I said, I want to be less apologetic about that, and because I think it's too dangerous to just let it slide in such a sense. And I personally have suffered too much to just put up with it anymore.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that point about people who have been profoundly damaged. You don't see them with the pyramids and the harmonizers and all that stuff, because we all know it doesn't. And some of us, and I think I've admitted this to you before, I bought a harmonizer a long time ago before I really got into the assessment and remediation stuff. And it cost $1,000. And it was at a time when I had lost everything. I didn't have $1,000. I'd spent it anyway.
Wow.
And so I'm sympathetic. I understand. I think there's this cultural thing, and we pick it up from television and media and from physicians and whatnot, which is you can get yourself in trouble medically, and then there's just going to be a magic pill that you can take, and everything's going to be all better. And it's not exactly that, but it kind of rhymes with that. The idea that you can have this horrific electromagnetic environment, and I'm going to put a little tiny pyramid over there, and it's going to make everything better. And I deal with people all the time going into their homes and look at their degree of disability, and it's taken a number of years, and it's taken everything that they have away from them, and now they've got this condition, and now they're no longer able to work, and they've got a $5,000 coffee table size harmonizer. That's the big brother of the little $1,000 one that I, in my foolishness, bought years back, and it just breaks my heart. That's all. It just breaks my heart. I hate to see. I understand, I think, all the factors and how that works, but it just breaks my heart to see people not get real help when they need it. So, speaking about help when they need it, how can people get in touch with you?
Easiest is just to go to Vasku.com, VASKU.com. There are some links to where you can contact me. There's a lot of ways that email, Telegram, Signal. I've been helping out people. I don't ask an hourly rate because I've noticed like this is the flip side of the thing. Is like there's people making lots of money on selling this snake oil, and when we come to the other side, it's a lot harder to make the money because the people that are really affected generally are at the end of what their financial means are because they've already, the life has broken down. So I don't want to put the barrier in that. So I have some people that gift money because they've been helped, and that helps me. And there's people that really can't give anything, but they need help too. So, you know, I just try to do what I can. I also have a limited amount of energy and time per day that I can do, but till now it's been very rewarding because the people that have contacted me are the ones that are really in a bad situation, and they've been benefiting the most from what I can. I don't think I have the energy to be like a full-time advocate and set up a business and to make it all work and do it. I'm just doing what I can while I'm trying to figure out how to improve my situation, because it's an ongoing process of trying to make things better, to find a way to work with technology and have somewhat forms of comfort and convenience, and on the pathway help other people with it. So yeah, it's not a perfect business pitch as such, so. And I don't think I really could do that. But what I can do, I do. I try to help people where I can in improving their situation. But maybe we should just get into selling amulets and things, and that'd be much more profitable.
I've often thought, my wife and I used to make jewelry. It was just... we never made any money really at it or anything. It was just a really fun thing to do together. And something about working with silver or gold or copper, it's just soothing. Nice. And so I know what kind of harmonizer I would make. It would be a beautiful silver core and a copper spiral around it. And I would tell an enchanting story about scalar vortexes or whatever, and sell it for $20,000 each. And because it costs so much, I could make 100 times more than I do as a EMF consultant.
Yeah.
All of this, of course, is in jest. The day you see me selling a harmonizer or a pendant or an amulet, yeah.
Oh, and it even goes down on I mean, the last thing, I don't want to stretch time too much, but I just found this designer and seamstress who's EMF sensitive in France, and she makes really cool clothes that really work really well. It's like a really nice design. And the prices are, I thought they were a bit low because they were 200-300 euros, so that's about the same in dollars. Because if I look at that and I know what the material costs are, that's pretty much the material cost. The materials are incredibly expensive. So I contacted her. It's like, how do you do it? How do you, because I look at the material costs, and I think you probably spend 200-300 euros just on the materials. And so you should actually be selling it at probably 600 to 800 euros. And her answer was, yeah, that's what it should be. But most people that really need it at that level, they can't afford that. And it's bespoke clothing. So I just make it and do it because I want to inspire people that they can protect themselves. And I put it out there and make it available to people. And she basically has a little trickle of money coming in that she just barely survives on. But, here's somebody who's a great designer, does the right thing, but really has to keep the price low. And then there's another one who is, I think, a DJ or ex-rapper in England. Great woman, puts out this amazing brand of 70 different kind of apparels, beanies and things and clothes, but openly states to reduce the cost, to keep it affordable, we only keep the patches on where it's most useful, above the heart or above the groin, and that's it. Which I think you would agree is actually the worst thing you could do. Is like you're putting a mirror in front of your heart, and if somebody has a phone behind you, you're actually blasting it twice as bad into your heart. It is making a situation more dangerous. But obviously, they've got their whole sales pitch right. They've got the prices right. It looks really good. And even for the skeptics that say, oh, I don't do harmonizers, I want real factual protection. They look at it and go like, yo, those are good clothing items. They look hip. They look nice. The brand is good. The logo is good. Everything's fantastic. Except, no, it's not. It's actually dangerous. It's not protecting you. And so right. Where's that balance between knowing what is right and what is doing what is right? It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one.
Yeah. Well, my friend, I have to tell you, I really enjoy our conversations, and we have to discipline ourselves, because you and I can both get busy and we won't think about connecting. You told me something funny in the letter. Maybe I'll read it for people. I often have talks with you in my head, which then do not translate into actual communication. And we got to do this more often. We have to do this more often.
Yes, I would like that. Yeah.
All right. I really appreciate your being here today. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for, you've always made it a lot easier for me to stay strong and finding my way through it. Thank you.
The EMF Remedy podcast is a project of EMF Remedy, LLC. We'd like to be your trusted guide for achieving a better EMF environment in your home. The contents on this podcast are provided for informational purposes only and are not intended to substitute for the advice provided by your doctor or other healthcare professional. It is not intended to be, nor does it constitute healthcare or medical advice. Opinions of guests on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the EMF Remedy podcast.